My parents ignored my broken leg for my sister. Then I made them regret it. I was just 17 when I shattered my leg during the regional track finals. This wasn't some minor twist or a bad sprain. It was a full-on break, a clean snap that echoed across the whole field. One second I was sprinting, and the next I was lying on the ground, screaming in shock and agony, my mind racing as fast as my legs had been moments before. But before I dive into all that, let me say this: I've noticed the channel's been slowing down a bit lately. If you're here and you like these stories, hitting that subscribe button is the easiest way to show support. It's fast, it's free, and it really helps keep this community growing strong. The ambulance ride after that is mostly a blur, a jumble of sirens, tears streaming down my face, and a fog of confusion I couldn't shake. I had poured my entire year into training for that one race. It was supposed to be my big break, a shot at a full-ride scholarship. There were scouts in the stands, coaches with clipboards, even cameras rolling. But instead of crossing the finish line, all anyone saw was me being hauled off the track on a stretcher. At the hospital, I must have asked for my parents a dozen times. I was freezing, hurting all over, scared out of my mind, and desperate just to see someone I knew, someone who cared. In my head, I pictured them rushing through those hospital doors, frantic and breathless, grabbing my hand, whispering, "We're here, we've got you." But that moment never came. Nobody showed up. The only person who held my hand while they set my leg and inserted that metal rod was a nurse named Maya. I drifted in and out under anesthesia, half conscious, half hoping that maybe my mom was there smoothing back my hair, or that I'd catch sight of my dad pacing the hallway outside. But when I finally came to, the only thing waiting for me was a voicemail. My mom's voice chirped through the speaker, bright and casual. "Hey, honey, we're not going to make it to the hospital. Your sister's college orientation got moved up, and she's nervous. This is a big deal for her. I'm sure you'll be fine. You've always been so strong. Love you." And that was the end of it. No visit. No flowers. Not even a simple "how bad is it?" No card, no picture of my dog to make me smile. Nothing. My sister Hannah? She'd always been the star of the show, straight A's, pageant crowns, the girl who got a brand new car at 16 just for making honor roll. I never resented her for it. Honestly, I admired her. But I always felt like I came second, like I was the extra scene after the credits that nobody really sticks around for. The accident just sealed that feeling. They didn't even mention it online. No, please pray for our son. No photo of a hospital wristband. No heartfelt post with emojis and hope. But Hannah's orientation? Oh, that made the feed. Pictures of her beaming with a campus map in hand, posing in front of her new dorm, and a caption that read, "So proud of our girl. Next stop, greatness and me." Meanwhile, I spent 4 months hobbling around on crutches, practically invisible the whole time. They left me in the care of our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Fletcher. Bless her heart. She made me tea, helped me get to the bathroom, and even covered the cost of an in-home therapist when my insurance wouldn't pick up the bill. One time, I called my parents just hoping maybe they'd finally get it, how serious it all was. My dad answered. Said, "We'll visit once we're back from campus. You're okay, right?" Then silence. And that silence, it made me question if maybe I was making too big a deal of it all. After that, I stopped calling. Instead, I started writing. I kept a journal of everything. Every painful twinge, every session with my therapist, every little victory I hit without them around. I wrote about what it felt like to go to doctor appointments alone, to ask a kind stranger to help me shower, to drag myself to the mailbox just to feel like I was doing something. But something deeper broke that day on the track, and it wasn't just bone. It was this idea I'd always clung to, that my family's love was unconditional. Turns out, it had strings. And those strings snapped clean through. One day, I got an acceptance letter from a local state college. They had a solid kinesiology program, and ironically enough, I'd become obsessed with recovery science after what I'd been through. I wanted to learn how the body worked, how to rebuild it, how to put myself back together piece by piece. And I was hellbent on walking across that graduation stage with my diploma in hand, even if I had to cheer for myself. When I told my parents the news, my mom smiled and said, "That's sweet. Maybe you can transfer to Hannah's school later on." What she didn't know was that I'd already turned that offer down. I was done walking in her shadow. I wanted to build something of my own, slow, steady, painful steps in a direction that belonged to me. College wasn't flashy for me. While Hannah snapped selfies with her sorority sisters in pastel crop tops, I was working late shifts at a smoothie bar, doing physical therapy on campus during the day, and studying long into the night with a heating pad wrapped around my leg that still ached like hell. My dorm room was cramped, shared with 3 strangers, and reeked of old sneakers and instant ramen. But it was mine, and I wasn't about to waste another minute trying to get noticed by anyone. The pain I carried, from the crush, from their silence, from the birthday cards that never showed up, started to shift. It didn't vanish, but it changed shape. It became my fuel. That broken leg turned into my compass. I dove deep into studying how the body moves, focusing especially on injury recovery. For one research paper, I wrote about neglect in recovery, using my own experience as a silent case study. My professor actually cried reading it and nominated me for a national undergraduate award. 2 years later, I was standing in Chicago, presenting that same paper at a conference. The applause felt powerful not because people were finally seeing me, but because I'd created something that deserved to be seen. Meanwhile, Hannah's Instagram changed too. The sunny, perfect sister posts disappeared, replaced by cryptic lines like "learning who's real" and "trust no one." Word got around that she dropped out, something about not getting into her program and fighting with her roommate. Things started to shift at home too. My parents stayed silent until I made the dean's list for the 4th semester in a row, and some cousin mentioned it in the family group chat. Then, out of nowhere, my mom messaged, "Well, why didn't you tell us, sweetie?" I stared at the screen, half laughing, because I had told them. They just weren't listening back then. I sent back a screenshot of their old voicemail, the one about how Hannah's orientation was the big deal. No reply. That summer, I landed an internship at a major rehab center. I worked with stroke patients, athletes, even a guy who'd lost both legs and was learning to walk on prosthetics. I found peace in the work. I found purpose in the pain. I wasn't just healing anymore, I was helping others heal. Meanwhile, Hannah moved back home. My parents never explained why, but her social media went dark. She wasn't the campus queen anymore. She messaged me once, a single question: "How did you manage to keep going?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I kept building. I graduated with honors, applied for scholarships, and got accepted into one of the state's top doctoral programs for physical therapy. My capstone project was a system for affordable injury recovery aimed at underserved communities, modeled on what I had to design for myself. When my parents left me alone with a broken femur, by the time I was 24, I'd launched a startup with 2 colleagues. It was a mobile clinic system, bringing recovery resources straight to rural areas. My name appeared on press releases, I got podcast invites, and even a TED Talk request came through. Through all of it, my parents stayed silent, until the day my startup was featured in a major wellness magazine. The headline read, "From Abandoned to Advocate, How One Young Woman Turned Pain into Purpose." That same day, they posted the article on their Facebook with the caption, "Proud of our daughter for always being strong." I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cold distance, like watching strangers pose for a photo you're not in. Then came the surprise I never saw coming. Hannah applied for a job at my company. She didn't know it was mine. Her application came in like any other, same last name, so I thought maybe it was coincidence, until I read her cover letter. "I'm passionate about supporting recovery in underrepresented communities," she wrote, "and I'm seeking a second chance to do something meaningful." That hit me hard, not because I wanted revenge, but because the universe was holding up a mirror. What I did next would shape not just her story, but mine too. I called her in for an interview. She showed up looking tired, somehow smaller, not in her body, but in her presence. The light around her was dimmer. At first, she didn't recognize me. Not until I stepped into the conference room and said her name. Her face went pale. "You're the CEO," she whispered. "I'm the founder," I replied. "Built it after the accident, remember?" She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. That's when it hit me I didn't have to humiliate her. Life had already done that for me. All I needed to do was decide what kind of person I wanted to be with the power I had earned. And that decision was made years ago, the moment I took my very first step on a healing leg in a quiet room filled with empty chairs. I gave Hannah the job. Not out of sympathy, but because I believed in growth, not just hers, but mine too. She started at the bottom, just like I did, taking intake calls, shadowing therapists, learning with quiet humility. And to her credit, she never flinched. Not when she had to clean equipment. Not when patients ignored her. Not even when the team celebrated my birthday with a cake. She stood there, silently, in the corner, getting a glimpse of what it feels like to be forgotten. One afternoon, after we wrapped up a mobile clinic visit in a small town, she sat beside me in the van. We were quiet for a long time until she whispered, "I should have been there when you fell." "I'm sorry." I didn't answer with words. Instead, I handed her a photo. It was the X-ray of my shattered femur, with a note taped to it that said, "Sometimes the worst breaks lead to the strongest foundations." She stared at it for a while, then gave a slow nod. Months went by. We weren't friends. We weren't close. But we weren't enemies either. We became something rarer, people who had seen each other at our worst, and still showed up every day to try again. Here's the final twist. Our company received a government grant large enough to expand nationwide. I was invited to lead a televised panel, and when the news anchor introduced me live as the founder who turned being abandoned into a legacy, the camera caught my parents in the crowd. They stood and clapped awkwardly, their pride visible but empty, because they knew I hadn't just learned to walk again. I had walked right past them, and I never looked back.